Welcome, mutineers, as we sail into uncharted seas to discover our highest selves. Today's guest is Roxanne Chaput. Her work in leadership was very similar to mine. She worked her way to the top and then went the spiritual direction. Her life is about helping leaders and people who are striving to really center their work, their leadership, their values on spiritual principles to ensure that they are leading and that they are being from a place of purity, a place of spiritual wholeness. Her work really tying the medical system to spirituality and healing is something that is so desperately needed. And so please, really enjoy this wonderful discussion today with Roxanne Chaput and the way that she talks about the soul that we should really be embracing in the things that we do. This podcast is sponsored by Pachamama Sacred Paths. If you are interested in your own medicine journey and you want to do it in an authentic way, please go to their website that is in the description of this episode. It is sacredpachamama.org. They are an absolutely incredible outfit that I have benefited from in my own life. The Mindful Mutiny Podcast is also sponsored by Exponential Intelligence. Unlock rapid transformation, peak performance, and your natural intelligence through powerful frequencies and coaching that will shift your mind, body, and spirit. If you're ready to break free, expand your consciousness, and join a community that's all about radical growth and real hope, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, and we will mutiny together. And finally, go to jeremyvanwert.com to learn more about me, my therapy, my coaching, and all the things that I can offer you. Welcome to the revolution. Let's rise. So today we have a very special guest that I'm really excited about interviewing. A lot of really wonderful things going on here. Roxanne Chaput. Roxanne, welcome to Mindful Mutiny.
I'm so thankful to be here, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me.
Roxanne Chaput is a globally sought after leader, speaker, and healer, known for guiding top leaders, healers, and practitioners towards personal mastery and conscious leadership. She is frequently featured on global stages, sharing her expertise in the mind, body, and soul connection, as well as self-healing mastery. Roxanne's work bridges ancient healing wisdom and modern practices, collaborating with both spiritual and medical professionals to foster holistic well-being. As the creator of cellular healing, she has helped thousands of individuals achieve profound transformations through retreats, ceremonies, and personal mentorship. A devoted mother and spiritual guide, Roxanne continues to inspire deep healing and harmony in individuals worldwide. And so you had such an incredibly long bio, and I was able to shrink it kind of down into that. You do so many things, and you've had so many wonderful adventures. Can you talk in your own words about what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really bring it to more of conscious leadership and spiritual alignment. There has been so many events throughout my journey, through careers and being an executive and understanding how vital wellness is within any industry and within anyone's life and with anyone's business. And this has been a sacred mission of mine for quite some time. And throughout my journey, I've really explored, my own healing journey of cellular healing. And what this entails is the full multidimensional healing of our entire being, working from the mental body, working from the emotional body, the sensory bodies, the centers of intelligence, the physical body, and the astral energetic body, which has been riveting work and has been extremely, extremely successful with all of my mentees and all of my clients.
You had mentioned that you'd been an executive, and we had talked about that a while back about your executive journey. Can you talk a little bit about your own executive journey and how that influenced you going where you are now?
Yeah, absolutely. My entire life since I was a little girl, I just had this deep knowingness and I just had this deep fire within me that I knew that I was meant to serve humanity. And I didn't understand what that was And I remember trying to connect with family and friends. Do you have this burning feeling that you're being called to do something, yet you don't know, quite what that is quite yet? And they were like, no, like, I don't know what that is. Like, I know I want to be a doctor, a lawyer and things like that. I was like, well, that's amazing. But it was something beyond that. And I went through my journey. I went through, the academic route, what we should do in life. And I ended up being an executive for quite a few organizations. And they were amazing. I loved serving. I loved doing what I was doing, but there was this aspect of me that just felt so unfulfilled and I couldn't quite understand what that was, but I knew that I wasn't serving in the capacity that I was meant to serve. And I knew that I wasn't being fulfilled in the way that I was meant to be fulfilled. And I was working at a cancer center and I just remember absolutely, loving serving patients. And as they were going through their transitional phases, a lot of them were near death experiences, and palliative care and symptom management and the whole journey going through, this beautiful aspect of life where they were now facing the transition of life and the conversations that were being had and the fulfillment that, really happened in my heart was just so beautiful. Yet it was so soul taking as well, because I just absolutely loved every single patient that I, interacted with and had connections with. And it takes a toll on you once you start losing patients that are in, the palliative care state. And I ended up, having this incredible leadership transition where I ended up working in the educational sector. And it was amazing, but the connection that I was having was very superficial. It was very, let's just get business done. There was no empathy, there was no compassion. It was all about business. And that really just didn't feel in full alignment with me. And I experienced my first near-death experience. And I went over a cliff in a vehicle and survived. And at that point, that was like a pivotal moment for me to really, ask those deep, riveting questions. Am I serving the way that I'm meant to? Am I actually happy and fulfilled and living in inner peace? Am I actually happy with the relationships and the friendships that are surrounding me? And that started to unravel, a little bit further into my leadership and how I was serving and what I actually needed to pivot and where I felt I was being called. And that's where I ended up leading a lot of light workers.
Well, right, right. And this traditional route that we all kind of tend to take because the educational systems kind of point you in a direction of what serving looks like and what
Yeah.
what leadership is, and then you get into it and you realize that it's something that's completely different than what you expected it to be. And it sounds like you went through one heck of a long transformation process and really understanding for you what true leadership actually was.
Yeah. And what I noticed throughout my leadership 10 years is that they were never leading with human connection. It was always leading with the bottom line and how do we save money, sales, which are vital aspects of any business, right? Any
Mhm.
operational aspects of the business, any functionality of the business is vital. But there's also to have empathy and compassion as a leader and I don't believe in hierarchical statures. I don't believe that, one person is better because they, have a different position within the business. I think everyone within a business has their vitality within that business and every aspect of the business is needed and fruitful. And there was this feeling that human connection was being taken out of leadership as well, where we weren't leading with our hearts and our souls. We were leading with I should have belief systems that were very falsified and just out of structures that really weren't serving, our businesses and the people that we were serving. It was very based on greed. And that was very disheartening. And for me, that was also another pivotal moment for me to understand, where is the human connection? Why is there such a lack of empathy and sympathy and compassion for others, especially when they're within us and they are part of us and they are help facilitating our businesses to be successful? And that is a huge part of what I do, is bringing human connection back into the vitality of businesses. That's why, employees don't stay or contractors don't stay. If they don't feel fulfilled and they don't feel aligned with leadership, it's very challenging to be able to stay when you don't feel like anybody cares about you, or that you're just a number at the end of the day. So I've learned a lot throughout my leadership tenures, and that's really, helped form me into the leader that I am today.
Hmm. You know what I noticed when I got into leadership is that, you get in there, you're super idealistic, you're really excited about it. You read all the big books, right?
Yeah.
All the John Masterson, all the Good to Great,
John
all the culture for
Maxwell's.
exactly. You read it all,
Yeah.
right? And then it takes years, because you get in there and you got your heart full and you're leading from the bottom, and you're out there helping the troops and everything like that. And then you find out later that you're surrounded by psychopaths in the leadership space. You're surrounded by people who don't believe those things at all, that they've read the books and they like that you've read the books, but they don't adhere to any of those principles. And that was really a shock to me, to find out that that was the rule, much less than the exception.
Absolutely. And what I have noticed, and this does not speak to every leader that's out there, absolutely not. But what I've noticed throughout my leadership process is that in order to have hierarchy in the way that it's demonstrated, obviously there's going to be a chain of command, right? Like that's just what it is. Someone's going to make the executive decision. Someone's going to be the visionary of the business. Someone's going to carry out the operational aspects of the business. That's beautiful. But then there's also this aspect that there is this hierarchy that you should respect me because of, and you're demanding respect and you're demanding for people to fall in line just for the sake of. There's this aspect where I feel like a little bit of narcissistic tendencies and A-type personalities kind of collide with one another, where they feel like they're better than other people, which that is not true leadership. True leadership is walking with others and bringing them up to be leaders alongside with you.
Mm-hmm.
Not about, this elevation of being better than somebody. And I've noticed that a lot of the times, you know, in boys clubs, where no woman is really allowed to become into leadership unless they really like claw and fight their way into it, and actually bring a little bit of human connection and bring a little bit of empathy and compassion into the business. But I've also seen equally women leaders being exactly the same in terms of personality tendencies, right? Of their leadership style. Then if they have, if they're grudged with somebody, like they take that out on, instead of having more of that personal affliction and that personal reflection, it's almost taken out to them on a professional level, which it should never have been, right? So it goes to show where leaders aren't fully healed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely true. And I've read a little bit in the things that you talk about archangels and how the spiritual guidance of archangels can help us in the ways that we're doing things. Can you talk about your work with archangels?
Absolutely. Ever since I was a little girl, I always heard their whispers. And I remember telling my mom, like, I have these imaginary friends and they're beautiful. And they always just sent me a lot of encouragement. And I went through a very, turmoil childhood and adolescenthood and adulthood. And, throughout my journey, I would always hear the whispers. I always had this positive perception on life. I always had this loving perception on life. And I went through quite a bit of, things that could have altered that. And I would always have their guidance, keep going, keep the momentum going forward. Like, you got this, it will get better. Like, it was always this reassurance and this guidance and this love and this light that was always around me. And I always remember feeling, and I still feel to this day, like there's this shield bubble around me, that I'm always being shielded in some capacity. Even when I went over that cliff, I should have died. That should have been a fatality. And the fact that I survived, I know that I was being protected as well. Like, there's no way that we did that drop and survive. Like, the police officers, everybody that came on scene, emergency services, they were all shocked that we had survived that drop. So it was just an affirmation. And I'm not saying that they're going to protect it from everything, but I always felt like there was this shield around me that there was this layer that people weren't able to penetrate. And I remember my brother even witnessing, and, I had this stepmother that would witness things that would happen in my life. And she's like, I don't know how you continue to maintain like such a positive, perspective and such positive energy as you go through all these things, where most people probably would have crumbled. And I always attribute it to that guidance. It's because I've always known that I was being called to serve, and I always knew there was something bigger happening for me, and it was happening for me, never to me. And I always had that perception, and I never questioned why things, that were unfavorable would happen to me. So why am I going to question, you know, anything that happens throughout my life if I'm not questioning, why when things favorable do happen to me, why am I not questioning that equally? So there was just this whole perception. And I remember hearing whispers, like live, like whispers, like it wasn't, something that was happening within the subconscious or anything like that. It was like literally right beside my ear. I would hear whispers from the angels just giving me guidance and, giving me clues and giving me hints as I was going. And then as I go through meditation, obviously, as you connect a lot, more deeply with that. But it was always just this beautiful guidance. And our angels, your guides, are always there to connect with you. They're always trying to disseminate information from divine intelligence. They're always trying to give you guidance. They're always trying to keep you on your sacred path that you agreed to come here with. What you choose to do with that, that's completely up to any human being. That's, the power of free will. But they are here to help kind of facilitate that journey and to help guide you into the right journey on where they're trying to lead and where you actually contracted your soul to be.
I know that sometimes people, they hear the good voices and they also sometimes hear the bad voices. How do you tell the difference between them?
The light will, if you ask the light directly, if it is coming from the light, it will absolutely reveal itself. Everything will try and masquerade itself as the light. And I've heard, so many clients say like, oh, like it told me, like when I was in connection meditation, like the energy didn't feel quite right, or, what they were relaying to me didn't feel quite right. Every time it comes from the light, it will feel in complete resonance. It will feel in complete love, unconditional love, peace, and serenity. It will never have an ulterior agenda. And when we ask the light directly, you know, is this from the highest primordial light, it will reveal itself if it is not, because it can't afflict into the highest primordial light if it is not of the highest primordial light. So there's a lot of things. Everything is energy, and there is dark energy. We have dark energy in the world, and we can very easily tap into that, just as we can easily tap into light energy. So it's being able to have distinction and be able to have, really to have that understanding and understanding of what you're actually connecting to and what is actually trying to relay information to you. If it's coming directly from the crown, it is more than likely from divine light, from creator light, God light, conscious light, Christ consciousness. If it's coming from anywhere else, more than likely it's not from the direct primordial light.
So we have this system right now that is very heavily weighted towards science as
Mhm.
defined by people in lab coats
Yeah.
that generally tend to work for companies that make a lot of money. And then you have this alternative healing world, and these two worlds are having a really difficult time with coexisting. And we're finding that the science is often manipulated in
Yeah.
order for it to continue with the profit roadmap that it has for itself. How is it that you work in this world to try to bridge this void with doctors? Because a lot of times they have a super dismissive
Yep.
view of alternative healing.
Absolutely. And this is such a powerful question, because the bridging between really the ancient arts and the ancient healing arts with the Western, you know, modern medicines and scientific measures and like even quantum science. I mean, quantum science is getting there more in the spirituality of the context, but it also is still a scientific measure. And that's what people have a discrepancy of understanding, is that science is just a measuring tool. Science is a discovery process. That's why science is always evolving and constantly changing, because we're always developing and we're always researching and we're always understanding something in a different capacity, in a different light. One time we can have a study that is very contradictory to another study in the next 10 years because we're understanding further about, the human anatomy, the human biology, and the human connection. Science is just starting to get into the understanding of spirituality, understanding that spirituality has been here since primordial time. Science has not. We haven't had medical doctors. We haven't had scientists that have, walked this planet for hundreds and thousands of years. These were spiritual contexts. So when we had doctors, they were considered the energy doctors, the spirit doctors, the medicine doctors of their tribal communities. There was no Western medicine. This was the medicine. This was the healing methodologies and, modalities that we had. So when we think about science and bridging, you know, science and spirituality, is that spirituality is what is the origination. That is like our human body, right? Our human body is up for discovery, and science is the tool that is going to discover our body. Spirituality is that same context. And obviously, there's a lot of agendas that don't want us to understand our full multidimensional self, because we become very powerful when we can be able to heal ourselves through our pineal gland, and we can heal ourselves in our multidimensional way, that we can tap into these resources internally. Just like our physical body knows how to heal itself, so does the emotional body, so does the mental body, and so does the astral energetic body. So when we understand this, then we understand the power that a human being has. And science doesn't even fully understand what the human body is capable of. We don't even understand our full brain functionality quite yet, nor do we understand all of the brains and centers of intelligence that are happening within the body. So when I meet with scientists, and when I meet with medical doctors, and I meet with, medical psychologists, I've worked in the healthcare field. I've worked with every medical doctor that you can think of. I've worked with every neuropsychologist, psychologist, social workers, things like that of that nature, where yes, what they provide is great tools from a book. They provide great healing tools and great coping mechanisms, either from their own experience and from a mixture of their literature and their research. However, what they don't speak to is they never speak to the spiritual body. They never speak to the emotional body. They always speak to the mental body and the physical body. And we can't heal if we're only healing half of our multidimensional self. We need to be able to heal the full multidimensional being. So when I have, psychologists and neuropsychologists and medical doctors coming to me and saying, I've tried this route before, I'm interested. I don't really believe in it because I don't quite understand a lot about it, because one, they're never taught, right? They're always taught the scientific base that anything that they can't see or visually understand, then it cannot be real. But yet they live with Wi-Fi in their phones, and they don't see the transmitters, and they don't see the Wi-Fi signal, yet they know that Wi-Fi works to their phone, right? So it's all about education. So that's what I like to do. I like to educate others on how the multidimensional being and how science and spirituality kind of connect one, together, because there are incredible operating systems and there are incredible healing modalities that are in Western medicine that can work very beautifully with ancient practices and ancient medicines. There's no two ways about it. But when we talk about like pharmaceuticals and things like that, we have to remember that if it ever came from the earth, that means that the origination of that medicine is created from the earth. However, the concoction is made, that medicinal ingredient came from the earth, right? So it is a natural derivative that happens with preservatives and additives and things like that that are added into it. But at the end of the day, that means that there is a part in the earth, right, of the medicine that is able to actually heal the body. So we can't deny facts. We can't deny what we already know to be true. So when I see, science and spirituality coming together, it's to understand that when you speak to somebody's knowingness, when I speak to a medical doctor's knowingness, and they can't counter it in their mind because it's very logical, it's never intuitive of their decisions of why, they're discussing patient care or anything like that. It's always more of that logical, perception of like what they're integrating as information inwardly. And when they understand from their knowingness, when I'm speaking to the knowingness and I'm telling them, this is my read on things, and when they guide them towards something and it actually becomes fruitful and it actually helps their clients heal or their patients heal, that alone is the facilitation that they need to understand, right? So there were no medical doctors 100,000 years ago. There wasn't even medical doctors over 30,000 years ago. these were the tribal community doctors, right? These were the people that had the ancient healing medicine practices and modalities. So when you have those connections and when you're seeing psychologists say, I've tried this, I tried behavioral therapy, I've tried this, I've tried that, I don't know what's happening. It's band-aiding a solution because we're not addressing the root of the issue, which a lot of times happens in the cellular field, in the energetic field.
So when we're talking about 30,000 years ago, we have a very unique society, civilization that we're living in right now with very
Yeah.
unique stressors. And it's just very different than any civilization really has ever quite been. And so what are the common blocks that you find in people that are unique to right now?
Fear, fear, a lot of fear. I feel like a lot of the belief systems are created in fear, and I find there's a lot of fear blocks and a lot of wounding. So if they've had a very, tumultuous life, if they've been through a lot of, vast experiences and colorful experiences, I find a lot of times, even though that belief system there, it's fear. And that fear really, that rootedness is actually deep sadness that hasn't been expressed or released. So a lot of the times those blocks are what I see within any energetic field, within any of the chakra systems, which I refer to as the centers of intelligence, because I believe that they're all neurons and they're all, neural languages that are happening within these centers. We've discovered a heart, within our gut and a brain within our gut. We've also, discovered a brain within our heart system. I believe that we're going to discover a brain as well within every center of intelligence that we have, because I feel that these are actually communicators. And these are what, when we talk about law of attraction, which I don't fully believe in, but law of vibration, law of magnetation, I believe that we have this beautiful aspect that these energy centers are actually always conveying information to the through the solar plexus, right? Through the cellular system, universal kind of system of how we attract and how we emit information to one another and to the universe. So, what I've really noticed is that fear is usually in belief systems, which is tied into belief systems. And that fear is usually a deep rooted sadness that hasn't been expressed, hasn't been acknowledged, hasn't been released. I don't really believe that fear is I feel it's a primary instinct when we're coming to, if we're in a very life and death situation. However, I don't believe that fear is actually the initiated emotion that we feel. I feel it's deep sadness and then it's transmuted into fear very
Mm.
quickly.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that right now because fear is something that, and we can also call it anxiety. There's a really strong overlap
Yep.
there in those two slightly different things. And it really does come from that. And if there really is one thing that is the condition of life in our current society, with all of the things that just happen to be going on right now, there is so much fear, fear of people believing other things, fear of our workplaces, fear of work instability, fear of a really unpredictable economy. These
Mhm.
these different things, they play into things and they become so centralized in the human experience that they become the default mode of the
Absolutely.
person. And so when you're working with people who are just coming from the tangible world, their car
Yep.
notes, their mortgages, their rents, their bosses, all of these different things, how how hard do you find it to be for the average person to just start dropping that fear off and stopping engaging with that default mode of thinking?
Yeah, it's very challenging at first because this is why a lot of the time cellular healing is in different steps and it's customized to every single person that comes, in mentorship with me. Because if there's belief systems happening in the mind that are preventing any work that it could happen at the emotional level or that could happen at the physical body level or that can happen at the energetic level or the sensory level, it's very challenging to be able to get beyond that because it acts as a barrier, right? So it acts as that main block. And what I know is that what I've seen throughout, 20,000, mentorship clients and things like that is that fear is always encapsulated by a narrative. There's always a narrative to fear. We don't come here and we don't pre-establish fear when we are just born into the world because we don't understand the concept of fear. We only understand the concept of divine love and connection, right? So fear, if our needs are not being met, then fear will naturally come in. But it's more of like that, again, like that deep rooted sadness that comes in because obviously our survival is at stake at that point, and that creates a deep sadness, which then transmits into fear. So when we look at those fear narratives where people have all of these financial blocks, they're worried about the next income, and rightfully so, because we're seeing the economic system, we're slowly seeing a crumbling happening throughout a lot of governmental systems and any system throughout the world that was created. So we're starting to see these kind of fall apart, and we're not quite understanding what that means and what that entails, because in reality, we never have security. When we have a job, it doesn't matter if the economy is good or not. We can't predict and we can't guarantee that we're going to have a job the next day. And we need financial viability to be able to live here on the earth, to be able to provide for our families, to be able to have a shelter over our head, and to be able to provide food in our bellies. So these are primary needs. And when our primary needs aren't being met, then obviously we're going to have all of these, anxieties and pressures. And a lot of times we'll see depression also step in because anxiety and depression usually go hand in hand together when we have a lot of fear happening throughout the body. So I find when people have a lot of fear, is it actually real is the question. And then we start developing, is this mindset, are these belief systems actually yours? Or is it a narrative that has been instilled in you and pushed in you to think that you always have to be on this, quote unquote rat race in order to be able to provide, in order to be happy, in order to be fulfilled? When we actually take fear out of the picture, when we give them a vision of what life would be like without fear, or other places in the world that don't have any financial resources, yet their heart is filled and they have inner peace and they feel supported and they feel unconditional love, then what are we fearing, right? So when we understand that, hundreds and thousands of years ago, not even, we didn't have homes. We didn't have homes. We lived in huts. We lived in, makeshift homes that we had community, we had collaboration, we had love, we had, support, we had all of these things, and we never needed to have a 9 to 5. We never needed to have all of these things outside of ourselves in order to be happy. And what happens is when we have fear is that we're putting external worth and we're putting external value on everything outside of ourselves, that if we don't have these things, then we can't be happy and we can't be fulfilled and we can't live in inner peace, which is the furthest from the truth. So when we look at the fear perceptors and we look at why somebody is holding fear, sometimes it's not even from their own life. Sometimes it's from projections of what they're seeing, happening in other people's lives, of what they've seen growing up. If they lived in poverty, they understand the struggles that could have come with poverty. There's a lot of mixture of components that can happen, but a lot of times the fear beliefs aren't even owned within that own person. A lot of times it's societal, sometimes it's environmental. So it's very dependent. But at the end of the day, is it actually real, right? Like, is that fear real? If you don't have a BMW to drive, is that fear real that I'm going to have a vehicle that's going to give me to point A to point B, right? So it's stripping those perceptions and those perspectives that are creating heightened anxiety and heightened distress within the body. Because when we're living in a heightened state of anxiety and distress, one, we're not feeling the emotions that are truly there. Because if anyone that has high anxiety, as soon as you express the true emotion that is underlying that anxiety, the anxiety naturally dissipates immediately. As soon as we go into our breath, the anxiety starts to naturally dissipate immediately because your breath is meant to heal. So when we understand all of these aspects of ourselves, we also understand that we are able to actually calm ourselves from a situation. But when we're living in heightened stress of anxiety, depression, and things like that, that are taking us out of emotional regulation, then we're also not living to our highest embodiment, and we're not living up to our highest self because we can't even get there because there's so many blocks happening within the multidimensional body.
And what are some of the key signs that someone's out of alignment with their soul's purpose, and how would you help them realign with their divine path?
Yeah, so they usually know. So a lot of the times you'll hear people say like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life, or, anybody that really has any slight depression or anxiety is not living on their soul's sacred purpose, because the soul has desires. The soul has desires of security, identity, sacred purpose, unconditional love, support, and things like that of that nature. So when those fundamental aspects of the soul aren't being supported, your body will know it. And if you can't connect with your soul, and you can't get soul guidance, and you can't, connect with your soul essence for guidance, then you know that you've lost disconnection. You know that there's a disconnection happening between the soul body and the physical body. And when we're in the mind and we're making decisions from the logical mind, and we're not making decisions based on our intuitive knowingness and our instinctual knowingness, then we're not calibrated within the soul. We are not making decisions, and we're not in alignment with the soul. Those that lead with the soul, it's a huge journey, because you have to fully trust and know that even though logically you might not know all the answers, or intuitively you might not know all the answers, that follow you along your path, without a doubt that you are living in inner peace, inner stability, emotional regulation, and there's nothing that is taking you out of this, regardless of any external event that is happening around you. And, like, even experiencing grief and things like that, it's being able to understand, if you're living in knowingness, that that person, or, that experience is in a transitional phase, and you're able to accept that because it's coming from knowingness. You're not living out of fear. You're not living out of the logical side of the mind, where a lot of times when we live out of the logical side of the mind, we're not actually in line with where our sacred purpose is leading us, because we're leading from the mind of I should have, I could have, I would have, instead of I know, right? I know that this is what I'm meant to do. You never hear somebody say, oh, I should never have followed my gut, right? They're like, I always should have followed my instinct. I should have followed my intuitiveness. I should have followed my gut instinct, because that is your soul speaking to you directly.
And how have your own ancestral roots influenced your healing and your leadership?
Oh, that's an amazing question. So that has been an incredible journey. This ancestral lineage has been absolutely powerful. Ever since I was a little girl, I knew, like, I wanted to understand all of the traditions, all of the medicines of. So for most that probably don't know, I am of a Métis tribal community here, which is Native American and French. And a lot of our, our practices, our traditions and things like that are obviously connection with spirit and connections with the medicines and things of that nature. And after my fourth near-death experience, I was called by dream state for almost 4 months straight by my ancestors, asking me, really just showing me a vision. It was, this beautiful, beautiful woman who felt like she was like my great grandmother. And she had teepees beside her, and she was standing in front of this ravina, and she had her arms extended to me. And she kept chanting me this melancholy and beautiful, serene song. And I just remember just feeling such a warmth and love from her. And every morning I would wake up and start chanting this song. And my partner at the time would be like, wow, that's a really beautiful song. And I would say, this is what she gifted me in my dream. And he's like, wow, like that's amazing. And I'm like, she just keeps coming to me, but I don't know what she's trying to show me. And it looked like she was trying to show me the land, but I didn't understand, because I've never been to that land. I've never seen that land before. And I didn't understand what she was trying to translate to me, because a lot of times our spirit guides and our spiritual mentors will come to us in dream state, because we're in our theta state and we're able to actually access that information. And I was trying to understand what she was trying to relate to me. And I went for a few months, and I was like, what is she trying to say to me? And I ended up meeting with one of the shamans in our tribal community, who is, the healers and things like that of our tribal community. And I was meeting with some of the elders as well, who hold all the wisdom, the traditions and all the medicines and the songs and things like that. And I was talking to the shaman, and I said, like, I keep having the same dream over and over and over again. And I said, I don't know what she's trying to show me. I said, I know she's calling me to the land. I've never seen this land. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. And as I was describing the dream, he said, she's calling you to the land. And I said, yes. And he said, she's calling you to the land to come and heal. And I'm like, to come and heal? Like, what am I healing? Like, what am I doing here? And he's like, it will come to you in vision. And I said, okay. And he's like, you're meant to be a healer. You're meant to be a shaman. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? And he's like, well, like after we had a lot of conversation about like the bridging of a lot of things, right? For her standing in front of the Ravina and there was like this river in between. And then I was standing on the other side of the Ravina. And anyway, so I was just like so shocked that he had said that. And I was like, well, what is a shaman? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, how am I supposed to like gain that wisdom? How do I learn? Like, what am I doing here? And he's like, it will come to you. And I started chanting the song that she was chanting me in my dreams. And he took a step back and he said, oh my goodness. He said, he's like, we haven't heard that song in healing practice for over 100 years. He said, my grandfather used to chant me that song before bed. Him and his great grandfather used to chant that song. And he's like, but it was almost like a little bit of a different rendition. It wasn't the exact same song, but like like the enunciations of the song and like the melody of the song were of the exact same. So I just had goosebumps all through my body. And I was like, what am I doing with this information now? And I ended up meeting with another spiritual guide who had no connection to the shaman, to the elder in the community. And I was telling her my dream and she said the exact same thing. So I was like, okay, like what am I doing and where am I going? And they're like, you just need to trust that you're going to be offered the guidance when you're meant to like be offered it. And I was like, okay, like I have to have patience. And meanwhile, I'm like trying to Google-licious, like, what could this mean? What could this signify? Where do I start? But it didn't have any answers, obviously. But I ended up, one night, it was the last night I had the dream. I woke up in the morning and I just knew I was being called to the land. And I just started driving and my car was pouring rain outside. And I was like, I just know I need to do this. And I was called to ancient healing grounds on reserves of like where a lot of like our Native American, descendants are. And I ended up getting called to the healing grounds and it was life changing what happened in that sacred ceremony that I went to that I didn't even know was going to be a sacred ceremony in that now moment. It was like this reconnection to my ancestry. It was like this
Mm.
reconnection to like past wisdom. A lot of wisdom was gifted in that moment. The understanding of the elemental nature. There was water around me, trees around me, fire from as I was smudging. I was doing like a smudging ceremony as well. For those that don't know what smudging is when you burn, sage or you burn a very honorable herb, sema, things like that, where we offer it back to the spirits in order to clear and cleanse and to offer for like protection and things like that. And all these animals started coming out of the forest, and it was just an incredible, incredible experience. I mean, I can go into great detail about it, but um, life changing, life changing. And when I left that forest in down torrential rain, it was like my life had never been the same after that. And being, hours into the forest, not one single drop of water hit me the entire time that I was in that forest, even though it should have. So there was a lot of things that happened there that were just absolutely incredible. So that was the reconnection to my ancestral lineage of understanding what I was being called to do.
Hmm. And can you talk? This is so fascinating. And your childhood, you had said that there had been a lot of trials and tribulations and so forth, leading you to an event like this. What was your life like as a young person?
It was just very a lot of abandonment in terms of father aspects. Just a lot of turmoil being raised by a single mother, right? And a lot of things that have happened that were, out of removing my sovereignty and removing a lot of my autonomy, which was very challenging for me because I'm a very free spirit and a very free soul, which affected me like deeply in those moments. But I released it just as quickly as it happened. And just a lot of things, like a lot of bullying and things like that, that happened throughout my life that really should never have happened. Um, but it was my journey, right? It was my journey to understand myself and to understand aspects of myself. And those that did the things that they did to me were more like mirrors, and they showed me where I needed to heal even more deeply within myself and where I needed to acclaim to my own power of voice and my own power of advocacy. So it was a very tumultuous journey to very toxic and very unhealthy relationships where I was being, physically, emotionally abused. So it just was a very tumultuous journey throughout the entirety of my pretty much, child, adolescent, young adolescent life.
I love working with energy healers and people who are able to scan and read, and I love listening to the way that you talk about all this and where it comes from. And so, as far as what you may be seeing in me, what is it that you would say that I need to do or go, or what would you see in me?
Absolutely. So I always like to see the full imagery of the body. I'm a very visual person. So when I read, I'm a very visual, like it's a very visual inception. So I don't need to physically see the body, but just to be able to fully see the body so I can do a proper scan. Energetically, I do, but I like to have the energetic scan with the physical scan as well, just because I'm very visual. So even when I channel, it's a lot of visions that come to me. So it's imagery, it's words, it's things like that that come to me. Sometimes it's sound, right? Where I can hear things that are being, relayed to me, but a lot of times it's more visionary. So I'm a very much more of a visionary healer. So when I do like void healing, I just like to look at the physical body to see where there's blockages, if there's anything that needs to be removed, anything that there's in distress, anything that could be even a belief system that is tied within the root. A lot of times, our ancestral or lineage kind of belief systems or things that have happened at young, stages of life, like from childhood, will also be seated into the root. And a lot of times they're connected right to your sacred womb, which even as a man, you have a sacred womb because you obviously create life, right? You create vision, you create dreams, you create all of these things. And that's where that comes from. So I always like to do a full physical body scan and to feel into the energy and tap into the energy, which takes me about 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Your crown has distortion. Okay. So crown, that distortion, we can go through it. I'll do an energy removal. But the distortion is allowing the logical side of the mind to overstep on the spiritual side of the mind. So questioning, doubting any channeled information that is coming through from your highest self, from your divine guides, spiritual guides, it's kind of coming through the root of the crown. So that means that there's interference. So it's not coming in divinely, it's coming in half distorted. So when it comes in from the hyperconscious to the overconscious, subconscious, conscious, it's not coming into the full details of the information because the subconscious is already contradicting the information of the exchange that's coming through, if that makes sense. So then you're going to come down to your throat. So it means that you're not speaking into the whole embodiment of the power of your voice. So there's a lack of power of voice, which would make sense from the connection that is coming directly from the crown down to the voice isn't fully being spoken out the way that it's being channeled and divinely guided through. So there needs to be clearing there in the throat too. Heart, there's definitely some things from childhood that are still sitting there. Some of it feels from previous lifetimes, to be quite honest, as well. So there's something sitting in the heart, a lot of emotional sadness that hasn't been fully released from the sensory of the heart quite yet. Now, when I move down to the solar plexus, you're channeling the way that you're relaying information back to the universe and what you're looking for and what you're looking to create from the sacral is coming out clear, but there's still some distortions because the energy centers are distorted as you're going through. So you need to clear those so that what is being projected out into the solar plexus is actually what you're looking to manifest and create for your life, if that makes sense. So then when I go down to the sacral, obviously it's going to be connected because you're not in divine principleship of your soulful guidance. So you're not creating from the soulful knowingness, you're creating with doubt still in those belief systems. If I want to be really successful in my business and I want, 7 figures, 8 figures to make in my business, am I actually emitting and projecting out that I'm capable of that? Or is there a belief system still sitting in the root that is actually countering that belief system of creation? Now I'm going down to the root. So a lot of it is, they're not saying ancestral, so more lineage. Immediate lineage feels like grandparents to parents, lineages that are sitting there that are still a little bit in disbelief. A little bit of those belief systems are still curated within the root system, which can do some clearing. So that's my scan right now.
Mm. And of the work to be done to clear these things.
Yeah. So have you ever done humming? Humming?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay. You ever feel like your voice is getting like you got to do a lot of clearing, or you feel like when you're about to say something, you're noticing that there's a little bit of a blockage in your throat when you're
Mm-hmm.
okay. So when you feel like that, that means that something that you're trying to actually relay isn't actually within your divine truth, or you're there having issues being able to bring it forth. So when you have anything that's happening in your throat, like just go into like a deep clearing out your throat, clearing out the vibration and elevating the vibration. Remember that sound always elevates vibration, right? So when we listen to high frequency music or we do high frequency noise with our throat, it naturally starts clearing out the throat. We can also do like removal of the throat, start moving energy out, pulling the energy out. It's just misplaced energy, right? So as you start clearing, the more that you function on clearing the body, the more that you're going to feel like you're working in sync, in collaboration, and what are they trying to show me here? In cohesiveness, right? They're using the word cohesiveness. So you're trying to be in connection of cohesiveness of the whole multidimensional body. The whole multidimensional body, a lot of it is tied to your centers of intelligence, right? So it's all connected with one and the other. So when you're doing a clearing activity, even though it's clearing out the throat, it's actually helping alleviate the heart as well. So when you do a hum, you're also going to feel a clearing happening within the heart space. But I can do a removal. I never do an extraction from the heart unless I'm doing an etheric surgery. You don't need that. A lot of it is just being able to clear and transmute, and you should be okay. You should be fine. Crown. Um, that will happen in deep meditation. If I bring you to a deep theta state, I would need about an hour and a half, a good hour at least to get you really into a deep theta state so that you can go right into the soul body so that I can do work on the physical body. But the crown is very much, if you go into very deep meditation, are you being truthful with yourself in every way, right? So that would be probably the pivotal questions that I would ask yourself when you're in. Are you living in alignment? Are you living in your highest alignment? Are you being guided to do something, and are you countering it with doubt? Or, are you being guided towards, they're pointing towards a certain something? So are you being shown something continuously that you're kind of logically trying to put off, or, not to fully step into and embody? So maybe it's like this idea that you still have a little bit of woo in your mind, even though spirituality is not woo in any concept, and against more of the scientific beliefs of the logical side of the brain, of, through academia and through family upbringing.
Truly fascinating. A lot of this stuff resonates with me, and a lot of this stuff is stuff that you are aware of, to a certain extent, and then to hear somebody else you really say it is really, really powerful. And you've worked with many, many different people on this kind of stuff, and helped people clear these things. And what are some of the ways in which you've seen people's lives change?
Drastically, right? I'm seeing people that come to me, they express themselves as broken. I don't believe anybody is broken. I believe that we're always on a journey and always constantly evolving and understanding the mastery of ourselves. And that is such a beautiful part of our journey, to be able to have free will and to have the power of choice. So when we have people that are coming to me and saying, I'm not in the relationship that I want to be, I'm not in the career that I want to be, I'm so lost. I did everything my parents wanted me to do, or I did everything that I thought that I was supposed to do, and I'm not happy, I'm not fulfilled, I'm not living in inner peace. I'm in constant resistance, I'm in constant, distress. I'm always, high anxiety, high depression. And a lot of the times it really depends on the being. Do we need to be able to go into the mind? Do we need to tap into the mind, go into theta state? And this is why I'm a void healer, because I can take anything that happens within a client and we can work with that dynamic and we can shift it so that they can be empowered within themselves. I help guide, but they heal themselves. You heal yourself, right? I'm not, the only thing I don't like is the reference as a healer, even though that's how they reference us. We don't heal others. We just guide them to heal themselves. We only heal ourselves, right? So it's really powerful. So when somebody has the ability to heal themselves and to live in inner peace and to live in inner love and knowingness, their life can never not be the same, right? It's a complete change, because what is serving me and what isn't serving me? Where do I need to create boundaries where I didn't have boundaries before? Where do I need to follow my sacred purpose? Where do I need to follow my soul's guidance? All of these things come to the table. And this is what, envelops them to living a life of being instead of a life of chaos, right? So when people come to me, I don't ever offer, an over amount of education when it comes to, a client or a mentee. I allow them to preview and to have perception and perspective on my life and how I live my life. And that right there is what speaks volumes instead of the educational aspects that I speak to, right? So you're speaking to someone's knowingness, because when you see someone live in inner peace and inner stillment and inner love, you're wondering, how can I also get that exact same fulfillment? And that's what we offer, those that come into mentorship and leaders that come with us, is that they're leading from their soul, they're leading from their heart, they're not leading from the mind.
When you're looking at our world and the way that it is right now, and all the things that are going on in the ways in which people are living in the Western world, what would be kind of your either guidance or wish for people to engage in as a means of healing and improving an entire society?
I think the first thing is to step into the breath, right? The breath is so incredibly powerful. And when we can just learn to breathe, not to survive, learn to breathe, to heal ourselves, that right there speaks volumes of ourselves. And we witness miracles and beauty every single day. And when we don't, witness these aspects, it's because we're still living in the constraints of societal conformity. We're not seeing love with one another. Yes, everyone has their strengths that they need to strengthen. That's what they've come here to master, and that's what they've come here to learn. It's not about judgment, it's about understanding and understanding. We are always shown the worst in humanity. We're always shown, how bad and how crisis this and this catastrophe and all of these elements to take us out of this soulful embodiment. Because again, if we become into this soulful embodiment of multidimensional self, we are multidimensionally powerful. And when we're multidimensional powerful and we're healing ourselves and we're changing the elevation and the vibration of the world, a lot of times this is referenced as the new world or the new age and things like that. But really, it's us living in this fourth dimensional aspect, where we're living in a dimensional aspect where we're actually enveloping our multidimensional self. We're living in the vibration. If we look at monks, right, for example, doesn't mean we have to be monks in order to feel so spiritually aligned or to feel, like a conscious leader or anything of that nature. But what we know is that the vibration that they emit, because of the purity of the divine essence, is absolutely incredible. And every single human being has that potentiality and has that capability within themselves. We are all multidimensional beings. This is not a gift specific to me. It's not a gift specific to anybody. We all have the ability to heal within ourselves. And when we heal within ourselves, we don't just heal, ourselves, we heal the future generations, we heal the generations that fall behind us, at least a minimum of 7 generations that are behind us. So when we take that initiative and we heal these aspects of ourselves and we show up in the world as this, and we are being who we want to truly be in this world, and we are feeling fulfilled regardless of our journey, regardless of the tumultuousness that we've been through, we're living in complete alignment and complete vibrational acceptance. And then we're creating the reality for our life that is beyond most people's unimaginable dreams. Because when you can create from a way of vibration of where you're creating life on your basis and you're not following the structure that is given to fail, right? It's not, we don't have academic schools to create strong conscious leaders. We have academic schools to keep people ingrained and ingrained into a system, right? So that's not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but that's just what it is. So if we're not living, and it doesn't mean you can't serve from a place that you're being a conscious leader, right? So, and it doesn't mean you can't have the both hand in hand. You can have a business structure and you can have vitality and you can offer amazing services to the world, and you can still be a conscious leader, and you can still be a humanitarian, and you can still have compassion and empathy and be living in your soul truth.
How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, they can access, I don't have any social media. That was a very intentional, decision on my part. I am always for platforms that value others, and there's no hierarchy. So I don't believe in social media, to be quite honest. So I'm all through my website. So at theilluminationretreat.com.
Here's what I love about you. I love your deep, deep sincerity. I love your efforts at trying to make this world a much more wonderful place and the people in it more happy, more cleared up, more in line with their real purpose, in line with what it is that they were truly born to be, and helping people transcend the ordinary, the perfunctory, and the fear-based thinking in order to be extraordinary. And I love how you connect people through that. And I also love that you followed that traditional route. You went that way. You worked yourself up into a very successful place in your life, and you still went, there is more. There is so much more, and I need to go find that. And you got a call and you listened to it. And I really love that you did not just simply go, this is a cool thing, and I'm going to keep doing the same thing that I was doing before. I love that you are somebody who is bringing all of this to the world. I love your work with helping people connect with spirit and archangels that help them hear the spirit speaking with them, because we have so much noise around us. We have so much media, we have so much expectation that those words get drowned out and those voices get drowned out. So you helping people actually be able to hear those things. I love that about you. Thank you for being that person in this world.
Thank you, Jeremy. And thank you so much for everything and for facilitating this conversation and just for, really facilitating this connection. So I just want to thank you so much. I deeply, deeply appreciate you.
Absolutely. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mindful Mutiny podcast. And in a lifetime, there's more decisions than anybody can count. Living the highest version of yourself is the most rewarding thing that you can do. Make incredible, positive, risky, and bold decisions to be the highest version of yourself. Now go be something great.